Good morning and welcome to Friday Live here on Nebraska Public Media. Coming to you from the Red Cloud Opera House. This show has been pre-recorded just yesterday, Thursday morning, before a live audience right here in Red Cloud, Nebraska. I am Genevieve Randall, and we are on Willa Cather's old stomping grounds, and her words have inspired so much, including music, some of which is performed in both Lincoln and Red Cloud this weekend, and we'll get the details on that. We'll hear poetry this morning by both Willa Cather and poet Chuck Peak. There is live music this morning from a singer-songwriter with his first show in Nebraska, as well as piano solos and duets. In Hastings, Prairie Loft is gearing up for the Flatwater Music Festival, and we'll get a preview of that. And if you drive around parts of South Central Nebraska, you might see colorful and realistic murals of an old garage, a barn, or a combine, and we will meet the artist behind those depictions. First, Bird Note.
This is Bird Note. It's before dawn on a spring day in the Big Cypress Swamp of Florida. Mist is rising from quiet water into Spanish moss hanging from the cypress branches. Suddenly, a startling sound breaks the silence. A male limpkin has awakened. This relatively tall bird, whose dark brown feathers are streaked with white, stretches and calls again. In the distance, a red-shouldered hawk responds. The limpkin hops down from its perch and begins probing the dark water with its long bill. It's foraging for apple snails, each the size of a golf ball. When it touches a big round shell, it grabs it quickly and pulls it from the water. Then, moving to solid ground, the limpkin positions the shell and, using the curved tip of its lower mandible, it scissors loose the operculum, the door that closes the shell, and pulls out the snail. One quick swallow, and it's on to find the rest of breakfast. By this time, other birds have awakened, and Carolina wrens and white-eyed vireos are declaring their territories. A pig frog adds to the amphibian and avian chorus of the Big Cypress Swamp. For Bird Note, I'm Michael Stein.
You're listening to Friday Live on Nebraska Public Media. Support for programming comes from Nebraska Loves Public Schools. Discover how the educators at one Nebraska school work with families to prepare blind and visually impaired students for independence in an I Love Public Schools film. Watch online at iloveps.org. And support comes from Humanities Nebraska, providing statewide programming that helps Nebraskans explore what connects us and what makes us human. Visit humanitiesnebraska.org to learn more. We start our Friday Live from Red Cloud with the National Willa Cather Center, who are so graciously hosting us and kicking off their 67th annual spring conference with the recording of our show. Events are through tomorrow evening. Ashley Olson is executive director, and she joins me. Thank you so much for hosting us here at the Red Cloud Opera House on Friday Live.
Genevieve, thank you for being here. We've been wanting to do this for a long time, so
It's
great to have you.
I agree. So many things to cover here. Is this the first time for a full in-person schedule? Did I read in 3 years for the spring conference?
Yes, our last fully in-person conference was in 2019. We had a hybrid event last year with select gatherings here in Red Cloud, so this is the first time we've been together for 3 straight days, so it's really exciting.
Yeah, pretty exciting for sure. So there was, just to let folks know, a 1 p.m. introductory session yesterday, many panel sessions and guests throughout, Dr. James English presenting at the Opera House, and then events started this morning at 9 a.m. So I noticed one of the guests then tonight is a very popular voice on NPR, Maureen Corrigan, book critic on Fresh Air. What will she be talking about?
Well, we are so excited to have Maureen Corrigan joining us, a familiar name and voice, of course. She'll be delivering an invited lecture called All the Glittering Prizes that was informed in part by her time as a juror for the Pulitzer Prize. And she'll talk about some of those really enticing backstage deliberations and decisions that we as readers are always so curious about that go into making those decisions. And of course, she was a juror for the Pulitzer in a very controversial year, so we'll let her get into that more during her talk. And she'll talk a little bit about, too, how books are valued and evaluated and the role she as a critic plays in that process.
Oh, yeah. I did notice literary prizes is kind of a theme, also the topic of the passing show with several panelists. What were Cather's feelings? Can you tell me anything about her feelings about prizes or judgments like this, or?
Well, I can tell you that her first major prize was the Pulitzer, which was awarded for one of ours, of course. And she got news of the award when she was overseas. And judging by her correspondence, she was pretty elated to have, and this was in the early years of the Pulitzer, of course. So she was really, really honored to receive that prize and went on to receive other recognitions. And I think they really cemented her status as one of our great American authors. And
Yeah.
of course, promoted sales of books, which every author wants to see happen as well.
I was going to say, when I'm thinking of music competitions, it shoots those stars, into the public eye when those prizes are awarded. So tomorrow, again, events start at 9 a.m. At Willa Cather's home church, yes?
Yes, we will have services at Grace Episcopal. Cather and her parents were members of that church, and if you haven't been there, it is a beautiful, beautiful space, and we recently underwent several restoration projects at the church, including restoration of the stained glass windows, 2 of which were donated by Cather and her siblings in memory of her parents. So it's a lovely space and an event we look forward to every year.
Excellent. Well, and there's some nature I notice on the schedule as well. One of my colleagues said she would be participating in a pollinator event, and I'm assuming that's part of the Prairie Walk, or no?
Yes, indeed.
Okay.
So we'll be walking the prairie Saturday morning, led by our education staff, which is another event to look forward to. We'll see some beautiful wildflowers, which are finally blooming. It was late this spring, but it did happen, and some readings, some Cather readings as well.
Excellent. So later in the program, we're also going to get some more detailed information and a preview of one of the music events that is part of the spring conference lineup. I'm wondering if there are some other highlights you feel like we've missed. I'm also wondering how much the spring conference increases the population of Red Cloud.
Well, that's a great question. Let's see. We have other events to highlight. I would be remiss if I didn't make mention of the exhibit in our art gallery, which is called Sound Stitching, Sights and Sounds of Willa Cather's World by artist Cassia Kite. And what she has done is she transforms hand-stitched images into playable musical compositions. So she will be here for an artist talk, and her collaborator, Dr. Stacy Bareilles, will perform the sound stitching images. So the exhibit becomes this really interesting sort of multi-sensory, multidisciplinary show. So I think people will really enjoy that. And if you are someone who won't be in Red Cloud for the conference, that exhibit is available digitally on our website.
Absolutely. All right. Well, Ashley, this has just been so great chatting about this, and it's so great to be in the Red Cloud Opera House for this show. Listeners can, of course, link to more information about the Maureen Corrigan event, which is a single ticket event. You can link to the full schedule of sessions and panels, the performances that Ashley just mentioned by Stacy Bareilles, artist Cassia Kite's work sound stitching, the Nebraska Chamber Players concert, which is on that schedule as well, and so much more by heading to the Friday Live page. There is a link right there at nebraskapublicmedia.org. And you can check out all of that information on the Willa Cather website. So we've been getting a little sneak peek here at the spring conference with Ashley Olson. Thank you once again for hosting Friday Live in Red Cloud, and have a great conference.
Well, thank you so much, and thanks for bringing the show on the road. It's great to have you.
You're listening to Friday Live, telling stories from the places we call home. This is Nebraska Public Media. Next, Jonathan Sakasitz from Hastings College brings us some live music. Not only does he teach many classes at HC, his performances appear on at least 3 albums, and he's appeared with the Kiara String Quartet, Nebraska Chamber Players in recitals, just to name a few. He is joined by one of his students this morning, Taylor Wilson, who is a high school senior. Together, they share the piano to play the third movement of Gazebo Dances for Piano 4 Hands by composer John Corigliano from the stage of the Red Cloud Opera House here on Friday Live. Nice. We heard an adagio there, the third movement of a duet by John Corigliano called Gazebo Dances, played by Jonathan Sakasitz and Taylor Wilson. They'll be back to play another movement from that same work coming up in about 6 minutes. There is even more art to learn about, including that multimedia project in the National Willa Cather Center Gallery. Our digital extra, the Friday Live Extra this week, covers the exhibition of sound stitching by Cassia Kite, translations of the images in music and sound by Stacy Bareilles, as well as an event by Flatwater Shakespeare taking over neighborhood parks and a Lincoln cemetery. You can hear the Friday Live Extra by downloading the Friday Live podcast or listen to it online at nebraskapublicmedia.org. Support for programming on Nebraska Public Media comes from Union Bank and Trust, locally owned with a commitment to lasting relationships. UBT offers customers personal and business banking as well as wealth management services. Union Bank and Trust, member FDIC. Support for programming also comes from Max Creek Winery, celebrating over 20 years of winemaking in Lexington with a commitment to sustainability. Max Creek offers wines, hard cider, craft beer on tap, and patio seating overlooking the vineyards. Open year-round, 7 days a week with curbside delivery, maxcreek.com. Stay with Nebraska Public Media's Friday Live to get a preview of artists at this summer's Flatwater Music Festival in Hastings. And in about 20 minutes, we'll meet a native Nebraska baritone singer and the composer whose work he will be singing. But next year on Friday Live, I am joined by Chuck Peak for some poetry, some of his own and some of Willa Cather's. He went to high school in McCook, studied at the University of Nebraska-Lincoln, is Professor Emeritus, University of Nebraska-Kearney, also taught at Northern Arizona University, even taught a semester in China. Oh my goodness. He is former rector at St. Stephen's Episcopal Church in Grand Island and former rector in the interim at St. Mark's on the campus in Lincoln, and winner of the 2016 Nebraska Book Award for Poetry. Now, Chuck, I want you to know I received an email from the National Willa Cather Center Foundation that said he has been a true friend of the foundation for years. He has also shared the stage, you should know, with Ted Kuzer and Laura Bush. Those are just a few. I am honestly scratching the surface here, and he shares the stage with us here at the Red Cloud Opera House. Chuck Peak, it is such a pleasure to meet you.
It's a pleasure to be here, and the privilege of having this view so I can see the hands on the keyboard as it's played. It's wonderful.
Right? Absolutely. So, as I said, I know you've got a poem of your own as well as Cather's London Roses. So I'm wondering how you chose the two poems that you have for us today.
With people known mostly as novelists, some of the last things scholars get around to looking at is the poetry. But she was an early poet, and thanks to this conference in previous years and to Bob Thacker, there's been a renewed interest in the poems. And I became at that time very fond of a particular poem. But this year, in the hope that the flowers were going to bloom on the prairie in time for the walk, I chose the poem called London Roses.
Excellent, excellent. Well, very good. Well, so I think let's hear London Roses, and then you can go ahead and read one of your own after that.
Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
Willa Cather's London Roses. Roses, roses, penny a bunch, they tell you. Slattern girls in Trafalgar, eager to sell you. Roses, roses, red in the Kensington sun, Holland Road, High Street, Bayswater, see you and smell you. Roses of London town, red till the summer is done. Roses, roses, locust and lilac perfuming West End, East End, wondrously budding and blooming. Out of the black earth rubbed in a million hands, foot trod, sweat sour over and under, entombing highway of darkness, deep gutted with iron bands. Roses, roses, penny a bunch, they tell you. Ruddy blooms of corruption see you and smell you, born of stale earth, followed with squalor and tears. Northshire, Southshire, none are like these, I tell you, roses of London, perfumed with 1,000 years. Thank you. It's really a poignant a poem, and it just brought to mind also about the time Willa got her Pulitzer Prize. Edna St. Vincent Millay was also getting a Pulitzer Prize, and you think of that, the summer fading, and Millay was such the gay creature, and then when that faded, her old age was not as happy as her young, and here Cather at the same time was developing and blooming into this amazing artist, and so the contrast in those two lives is striking. My poem is just called Lot's Wife's Lot. It's based on, of course, the Genesis story of Lot and his wife, and it's a short poem. You used to toss her over your left shoulder as easily as a bag of salt, and sometimes she'd return your affection with a quick little pinch. Such fun. You had no way of knowing how different you both were. You always looking ahead, she always behind. You like one who eats at the table as Jesus remembered. She like the salt cellar you reach for still. Thank you.
Chuck, thank you so much. When did you start writing poetry?
Oh, probably late 60s, early 70s, but I didn't start publishing poetry until I'd retired. So the three chapbooks that are out all came late in my life.
Okay. Do you want to shout out those chapbooks?
The last one was from Prairie Arts Brothers and printed at the University of Nebraska at Kearney, called Nebraska Conflicting Reports, a lifetime of essays and poems about my experience of Nebraska.
I like the title. When you yourself read a poem or hear a poem read and it really impresses you, what is it that strikes you?
There's a compression of language giving multiple possibilities of meaning, and to follow then the emotional thread of the poem through those varieties seems like a rich experience, and it's an expanding of your own horizons.
Well, Reverend Charles A. Peak, aka Chuck Peak, he keeps a WordPress blog online where he expresses himself on a pretty regular basis. Do you say C.A. Peak or do you call it Capeak?
It's called C.A. Peak.
C.A. Peak,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
Well, Chuck, such a pleasure listening to you this morning and hearing you read. Thank you so much for being on Friday Live.
Thanks, Genevieve. This program's always a delight.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This is Friday Live, recording before a live audience at the Red Cloud Opera House in Red Cloud, Nebraska, with more music next. Jonathan Sakasitz from Hastings College is joined once again by his student Taylor Wilson for a piano duet by John Carigliano. This is the fourth movement, titled Tarantella of Gazebo Dances, here on Nebraska Public Media. That was Jonathan Sakasitz and Taylor Wilson playing a Tarantella by John Corigliano. It's the fourth movement of his duet titled Gazebo Dances. This is Friday Live from Nebraska Public Media. I'm Genevieve Randall. Coming up here in just 3 weeks, Prairie Loft Center for Outdoor and Agricultural Learning will host the Flatwater Music Festival, Friday and Saturday, June 24th and 25th, with something for everyone. Amy Sandine is here to tell us all about it. Amy, it is so good to see you.
Nice to see you again, Genevieve. So good to be here again.
Yeah, thanks for being on another of our road shows as well.
I love these. Absolutely.
You're putting on the miles for us, and we appreciate it.
Happy to do it.
So I saw a Flatwater Music Festival Facebook post that said, "Did you miss us? We have missed you." So for anyone who isn't aware even of Flatwater at all, what's been going on over the last couple
Well,
years?
we had a scaled back version of Flatwater last year. Truth be told, this one is a lot like that one because it worked really well. So, 2020, it didn't happen, obviously, and we scrambled last year to put it together, and we're pulling it together again this year.
Okay, so we had a question earlier from our live audience, which is, how long has the festival been run?
This is year 15.
Woo.
And it's been hosted by Prairie Loft Center since the second year, back in 2008. So minus 2020, this is year 15.
Okay. Well, I also noticed that there was even a post way back in January that you had already confirmed Nebraska's own Rascal Martinez,
Yes.
who is quite the character and musician if you have not seen him. How and when did you know that things were full steam ahead?
Well, because we were able to do it last year and do it successfully, people loved seeing Rascal and some other of the bands, and we asked him back. People asked to bring him back, and this time he's bringing his own band. The whole band. So we're very excited about that. Again, that was scaled back. So we're increasing even the number of musicians on the stage at any given time. So very exciting.
Well, and I would love to hear more about who else is on that main stage. I thought I saw both brothers and sisters.
Right. Saturday night, I'm so excited. We've got the Cody sisters from Colorado, Denver area, followed by the Talbot brothers. And they are being presented by Pinnacle Bank and 5 Points Bank, both of Hastings. And they are also bringing their whole band. Obviously a favorite, originally from Imperial, Nebraska, now based in Portland, Oregon. Some of the nicest guys on the planet, along with Rascal and all of our other musicians.
And it's a World War II stage. Is that back too?
It is. So this is an old USO stage that originally traveled Nebraska and landed in the town of St. Michael. And we now have it at Prairie Loft. It's no longer roadworthy. Sorry, no one can borrow it. But it's got a hand-painted mural. I know you're talking about murals later in the show. And that was a community project and specifically designed for this stage. So yeah, it's a very cool setting on a farm that was once a working farm for the state mental hospital. Take that for what it is.
Right.
And so it's a beautiful agrarian setting with that stage set amongst the barns with the fireflies and the soybean fields and the trees. And it's just lovely. It's one of the best things ever.
And usually there's some family activities, crafts, local food, stuff like that.
Food vendors, art vendors, food trucks, and the string beans are coming back. So 2 p.m. on the 25th, Saturday, June 25th, string beans are coming back to do a family concert again, and that is provided in part by the Nebraska Arts Council and Cultural Endowment, and so much fun. Again, backed by popular demand.
And yeah, if folks don't know who the string beans are, they have been on Friday Live before. They are well known around the state of Nebraska, I think, as well as around the country.
They are. They're high energy. It's interactive. They bring their parachute. They bring their limbo stick. They bring their stormtrooper masks. I mean, it's just so much fun. High energy. And then Emily Bass and the Near Miracle, also Friday night from Lincoln and Omaha area, are back on the stage for the first time in 5 years. So
a
very
fantastic
excited.
voice there from Emily
Yes.
Bass. I asked her once why it was the Near Miracle, and it's because there's so many of them. It's like a near miracle for them to all get together in the same room.
Right,
So
absolutely. Yeah, they just built from a few to this near miracle group that's just high energy, fantastic on stage.
very good. Well, Amy Sandine is a superhero, obviously, whose powers are music, photography, experimental education, and nonprofit management, among others. She is executive director of the Prairie Loft in Hastings, where the Flatwater Music Festival takes place on June 24th and 25th. Amy, thank you.
It's my pleasure. Thank you for everything.
And you are listening to Friday Live. You'll be able to link to more about the Flatwater Music Festival and everything that you hear about this morning on the show on our website, nebraskapublicmedia.org. Jonathan Sakasitz is back at the piano to play for us solo this time. He'll play the second movement of 5 preludes by the Ukrainian composer, conductor, and teacher Boris Yelodashinsky. Lyadashinsky taught at the Kiev Music Conservatory in the 1920s. He also led the Ukrainian Society of Contemporary Music, very interesting composer. And following that, we'll hear a short piece by a Soviet composer and pianist of Russian Jewish descent, whose name I saw in Jonathan's email and fangirled because Nikolai Kapustin writes some of the most amazing combinations of sounds. And I think with Kapustin having played in jazz bands, you might hear a little of that influence in the sound. So, music by Yelodashinsky and Kapustin, played by Jonathan Sakasitz here at the Red Cloud Opera House on Nebraska Public Media's Friday Live. Bakasits playing a prelude, number 3 from a set of 24 by Nikolai Kapustin. And before that, he played a prelude by Boris Lyadoshinsky here on Friday Live on Nebraska Public Media. Well, don't go anywhere. There is more to come on this show, taped before a live audience here in Red Cloud, hosted by the National Willa Cather Center. We will be hearing a musician who has a new album coming out and will be performing in Aurora, Nebraska, and we'll talk with a rural muralist, say that 10 times, in about 14 minutes. Thanks for listening to Nebraska Public Media. We want your original music for our What If television series. Because What If celebrates innovation and creativity, our stories showcase original music submitted by Nebraska composers. In 7 episodes of What If, we have used 99 different pieces of music created by 23 Nebraska composers. For more information, visit the What If website at nebraskapublicmedia.org/whatif, or email What If producer and host Mike Tobias at mtobias@nebraskapublicmedia.org. I'm going to take a second to clear my throat because my throat's all dry. And Jeff can edit this part out. Okay. The 3 finalists for this year's community reading event, One Book, One Lincoln, were announced just this week. Join All About Books host Pat Leach and David Smith from the selection committee to learn about the 3 great titles to read over your summer. Head to our website for an introduction to the finalists, nebraskapublicmedia.org/allaboutbooks. Sometimes when you listen to a conversation again, you hear something you didn't hear the first time, and we podcast the show each week. You can look for that later this afternoon on our Facebook page or on our website. That address is nebraskapublicmedia.org. Support for programming comes from Bedient Organ of Lincoln, celebrating 50 years of designing, building, and servicing pipe organs throughout Nebraska and across the United States. On the web at bedientorgan.com. Well, we're about to learn a little bit about how the writing of Willa Cather has inspired music. My guests are composer and pianist Chris Ellenwood, who is joined by baritone Brian Leeper. They'll perform with the Nebraska Chamber Players as they premiere Ellenwood's work, Children of the Moon, which is based on Willa Cather's One of Ours. The Chamber Players will also play music by Ohio composer Rick Sowash on concerts both Friday and Sunday, June 3rd and 5th in Lincoln, and then a concert tomorrow, Saturday, in Red Cloud. Brian Leeper and Chris Ellenwood, I am so glad that you were both part of our show this morning.
Oh, we're very happy to be here.
Good, good. So, Chris, we've got you sitting at the piano and Brian with you, so you can just demonstrate a little bit about how Willa Cather's words inspire you, specifically One of Ours. I'm also curious, though, Chris, how you chose the title of your piece, which is Children of the Moon.
Children of the Moon is a phrase that Cather uses in this magical passage that actually inspired the work. The passage that I'm mentioning is one in which the protagonist, Claude Wheeler, has kind of a realization of internal lives, the lives of the people around him, but I think also his own, and the recognition that it's possible to be trapped by convention, by circumstance, by expectation, in a place in a life that really is not authentic, or the life that one wants or is meant to live. And he looks at people that are trapped in that way as children of the moon, because he believes that the moon sees who these people are. And I think it's an important theme, especially nowadays. It's important just for the well-being of the world that people are allowed to be nurtured and grow as they are. And Cather, I think...
Yeah, absolutely.
Cather, I think, is writing in this passage about her own experience. I think she was very well in tune with everything that means.
Excellent. Well, let's go ahead and hear some of the
Sure.
music.
So a little bit of background about the scene. Claude, when he's having this epiphany, is witnessing a moonrise as he is lying in a stock tank. He's taking kind of a soak at the end of the day. And the moon comes up over the horizon. And if you come to the performance on Saturday, you won't hear me playing piano. You'll hear my friend and colleague Jack Rinke, along with flutist Becky Van de Bogart, clarinetist Ed Love, violist Clark Potter, and cellist Jess Dussault. So it'll be a more rich color experience. And of course, my friend and colleague Brian will be singing. So this is a little bit of what the moonrise sounds like. It's a little bit twinkly, just because of the reflection in the water. So you hear that. And then you'll hear the voice enter with this motive. So. The moon swam up over the buried fields, big and magical, like a great flower. The water had been warmed by the sun afternoon. Thinking turns towards, as I mentioned before, internal lives. And in this next excerpt we'll play, he's considering how the moon has looked down upon the disappointments and the follies of humankind. It's a different experience than the sun witnessing humanity. She screamed particularly to the note down upon the valleys, down upon the valleys, and disappointments of men, and from there, he considers individual lives. He kind of traverses this thought, and Cather is a master at linking vast cycles of time and the historic past to the present. Time for her is all times, and that's one of the things that I love most about her writing. So here he turns to the experience of his mother and notices what her imprisoned spirit is like and what the moon sees in her. That's just a sample of what you will hear if you come to our performance Saturday here at the Opera House.
Oh, you guys, beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. Well, and Brian, as you get to sing this, I'm kind of wondering, as a singer, what it's like to sing and perform and learn brand new music like this, especially when the composer is right here.
Yeah, well, it's fabulous to do, and I've done several of these, and I've done some pieces of Chris's before in the past, and I love singing his music because he's takes so much care in setting the text, and they're always beautiful pieces. And it's a lot more preparation, I think, for me, because you can't go and listen to a recording, to see what it's supposed to sound like. But
Yeah.
it's really a beautiful process to do.
And then, Chris, for you, you've got these notes on the page first, which reminds me, we have an audience question about how you first start the process of writing.
In this case, it begins with Cather's words, and everything flows from there. I sit at the piano every day and I improvise. I make music spontaneously. And if I'm setting text, I will play, improvise, and sing. And then things coalesce in a mysterious way that I really can't articulate.
Interesting. So then to see those notes that you've written on the page come to life as you imagined it in your head, because if you're alone at the piano or singing yourself, as you said before, there's much more color in a chamber
Indeed.
ensemble.
And it's wonderful to finally have everything in my head externalized. I think most composers spend their time with these things living inside our heads, and it's a constant presence. So to have it finally materialize is just such a gift. And I'm so grateful to Brian and my colleagues in the Nebraska Chamber Players for their wonderful musicianship.
Now, Brian, I know both you and Chris are originally from Nebraska, but how did the two of you get connected for this project?
Well, that's correct. Well, we, I've known Chris for 18 years now because we teach at the same university in Wisconsin.
Just
It's
coincidence.
two Nebraska guys that just ended up there together. So,
right.
yeah, so we've done things in the past too, but this is really special.
Yeah, beautiful. I always feel like a sense of place is really important in Cather's work. Does it change the performance for either of you to be in Nebraska doing this particular piece?
Oh, it's so meaningful. I've been coming to Red Cloud for many years, and I first encountered Cather's work 36 years ago. I read my Antonia. I think that's many people's entry point. I've been to all of the sites here. The Prairie is one of my favorite places, so it's just a thrill, to have this work premiered here. Yeah.
So, Chris, another work of yours is on the program, and that one is based on writings of John G. Neihart.
Yes.
So, just like the sound of anyone's individual voice, Neihart and Cather have their own sound and feel. How does it affect how you composed that piece?
It's very different in terms of the colors. Everything flows from the words, and the wonderful thing about poetry, as Professor Peake mentioned, is the multiple meanings that exist simultaneously. And sometimes I try to reflect that in my harmonic language. In music, there are often chords that can go in multiple places at once. So to take interesting routes is one of my favorite things to do. And the Neihart pieces do that to a great extent.
So just to review for our listeners, the premiere is of Chris Ellenwood's Children of the Moon. Why did I typo that? Children of the Moon, based on text from Willa Cather's One of Ours, At Love's End, which is based on the writings of John Neihart. And then they'll play the Rick Sowash trio, Enchantment of April. That's on those two concerts in Lincoln and the concert in Red Cloud. Now, unique to the Red Cloud performance is a performance of Chris Ellenwood's ballad from 4 pieces for clarinet, cello, and piano. And then unique to the Lincoln performances is, I understand, guest flutist Melissa King, who can beatbox and
Yes.
play at the same time.
Yeah, I've made life difficult for flutists by writing a piece that requires them to play and sing at the same time and make all sorts of mouth percussion. So
Yes.
So
So that should be very interesting. And I've heard her do it she's good at it.
It's
So
fantastic.
my guest, Brian Leeper, here is the guest singer with that Nebraska Chamber Players performance as they premiere that Chris Ellenwood work on 2 concerts in Lincoln, 1 in Red Cloud this weekend. Leeper helps premiere Chris Ellenwood's work. Both have been my guests and performers this morning. Thank you so much for being a part of the show this morning.
Thank you so
Thank
much
you
for having us.
And you can find more details about this and more on the Friday Live page at nebraskapublicmedia.org. And we get even more music next here from Red Cloud. I'm going to pause right there and let you guys exit because then it occurs to me you'll have to walk behind poor Sam. So here's another edit, guys. We love our edits. Okay. Even more music next here from Red Cloud. Our guest played at the Lark in Hastings last night and performs again at a house concert in Aurora tonight at the Leadership Center. Then he continues his tour in Colorado. Sam Robbins is a Nashville-based musician and singer-songwriter, one of the 6 2021 winners of the Kerrville Folk Festival New Folk Competition. Sam released an album called Finally Feeling Young in May of 2021 and has a brand new album coming out this summer. We get to hear him sing his song Bigger Than In Between here on the stage of the Red Cloud Opera House on Nebraska Public Media's Friday Live.
I've spent years by the door with untied shoes, counting everything I could lose. If I take the first step and my feet don't fly, if I let my fragile dreams break free but die, I feel when my eyes can't see, there must be something bigger than in between. From every life I've ever lived, this is what I've gleaned. There must be something bigger than in between. I felt it in gymnasium dances, in weddings and funerals too. Glowing moments pushing us towards the truth, that no matter what we tell ourselves or try to prophesy, no one knows the road back home, but we can read the sign. And I feel when my eyes can't see, there must be something bigger than in between. From every life I've ever lived, this is what I've gleaned. There must be something bigger than in between. These days I bounce between my phone and my TV screen. A million voices shouting louder and louder at me. I don't know what to say anymore, I don't know what to think. There's so much fear behind everything. But when I walk outside, my neighbors smile, I still see the beauty in the new blue sky. It's so easy to see must be something bigger than in between.
From the Red Cloud Opera House stage, we heard Sam Robbins with his song Bigger Than In Between. Sam played his first show in Nebraska yesterday, June 2nd, at the Lark Listening Room in Hastings, and he plays his second show in Nebraska tonight at the Leadership Center in Aurora. His newest album will be out this summer. And now we get to meet one of Nebraska's visual artists, muralist Jamie Luttrell. She's also co-owner of the True Value Hardware in Hebron. She has landscapes and more on several local businesses in Hebron and on a building in Deschler to support their annual fair, out of others. Jamie, it's great to meet you.
Thank you.
Thanks for being here. So I think I'm going to dive right into our audience question that we got for you, which was, if you're doing a mural, do you get permission first?
Only if it's someplace that I could possibly get in trouble. I've done it in my home, and I've snuck into my mom's house before and come home and there's a tree on the wall.
You really surprised your mom with a tree on the wall?
Well, that was my house.
Oh, okay.
I painted my mom's. Yeah, I painted some stuff in my mom's house when she wasn't home, but moms like that. Go from hanging it on the fridge to painting it on the wall. I grew up.
I love that. Well, you also do paintings on canvas, yes?
Yes.
How did you very first get started in painting?
My mom is artistic, which is why I paint on her walls, because she appreciates that. She was always drawing when I was young, so she got me interested in art and creating, but I focused more on drawing when I was young, and I really didn't start to zone in on painting until I had a baby and he had a nursery, and I thought, oh, I'm gonna make it so awesome. So I kind of started in my own house, and then it just kind of started to snowball, and I keep thinking I'm going to exhaust my local market, but I don't, and they just keep asking, so I keep painting, and I love it. I love it.
Are you going to tell your child that he was sort of the spark for this someday? Because I love that.
No, it'll go to his head.
It'll go to his head. So tell me about this Deschler mural. Is this the one with the round barn that I saw? Okay.
Yes, they lost their that building in the tornado that came through, and as I did research, when they asked me, to kind of commemorate it, as I did research about it, it was such a cool building. And so I thought it was really neat that they wanted to kind of keep the memory of it alive. And it was fun while I was painting it, how many people stopped to tell me, their personal experiences and their memories of the fair back when, before it got destroyed, and, critique the color of the shingles and whatnot that I was doing, this is not how it should be. And I was like, well, anyway.
And now it's memorialized there in Deschler. Oh, that's so nice. What was the first mural you painted in Hebron?
Okay, it's kind of an odd connection how I actually started painting on other people's walls. When I first moved to Hebron, I didn't know anybody at all, and I lived on a farm, so there really isn't much opportunity to get to know anybody. Well, someone called me out of the blue and asked me if I wanted to do nails at their nail salon. And I was like, well, I've never done nails before. I worked at a vet. I could probably clip your dog nails, but I don't know how to do people nails. She said, well, I'll send you to be trained. That's how desperate they were for employees, apparently, in the community. So I thought, well, why not? Maybe I'll get to know people in town if I come out of my house. So I started doing nails, and of course I can't just paint a nail, boring. So I started putting nail art on people's nails. Well, I had this one lady that she always wanted nail art anyway, and one time she said, I kind of would like you to paint something on my wall. And I was like, well, we're going to go from your fingernails to your wall? Anyway, and so that was my first one here, which I thought was, that's a pretty big jump.
I was going to say
And
the
now
size
I'm on the whole
difference.
side of a whole giant building. So yeah, when I say it snowballed, I am not kidding.
Well, you know, the combine I mentioned in the introduction here, it's so realistic. But when you're talking about not only size, but we're talking about a garage door, I think it's on, that's not a
Yeah.
perfectly flat surface.
No.
I also saw an American flag on a brick wall. How do you deal with the weird surface texture?
Well, sometimes I don't think very hard about it till I got the paintbrush in my hand, and then I think, oh, what have I done? That was a terrible idea, because sometimes the idea is in my head, and real life application, I struggle with that. So the garage door was the first one I had ever done where it was going to be like a moving, flexible surface, and I was really nervous about that, you know, how it would hold up, and but it has. Surprisingly, I try to do a lot of research and a lot of, you know, talking to other artists that have done this and see what has worked and not worked for them. Because, you know, I'm learning by trial and error, so I'm trying to cut down on the error part if it's possible. And so that has held up pretty well. The bricks, I do not like painting on bricks. It's very hard to paint, you know, to blend paint and get it to look like a smooth, even surface on bricks. But again, sometimes I don't think about that as I'm designing it until I get in front of it, and then it's a little late by then. So
Have you discovered materials then that stand up to the elements like that outside?
Yeah, actually, and not to put a plug in for True Value, but I'm gonna. We actually have our own paint line. True Value has its own paint line, and I have been using their exterior paints, and they have held up beautifully. And so,
so you've worked with nail enamel, exterior paints on canvas. And I just want to mention on the website, I encourage folks to look. I saw a painted piano. So there's yet another size object, different surface. Then a very clean and realistic depiction of some hex bits, a hammer, a crescent wrench.
Oh, that was in the office at the True Value hardware store. He told me not to paint anything girly. So I was like, how about a 6-foot hammer? That ain't girly. So I put tools on the wall in the office.
I love that. That is just delightful. Can you do me a mural of a microphone? Because I think that would be...
Yes.
Absolutely.
I can.
Okay, excellent. Well, Jamie Luttrell, she is a muralist from Hebron, Nebraska, home of the world's largest covered porch swing, yes?
Absolutely.
All right.
I painted that too.
We are going to have a link to her website on ours at nebraskapublicmedia.org. Jamie, it's a delight. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And coming up this morning on Nebraska Public Media, classical music on Morning Concert. And this afternoon, Penelope Morrow is in on Classics by Request. Be sure to visit the Nebraska Public Media website for podcasts of the show at nebraskapublicmedia.org. This edition of Friday Live was taped before a live audience at the Red Cloud Opera House. Thanks to everyone who makes Friday Live possible. Thanks so much to everyone who makes our show possible, especially this week to our hosts from the National Willa Cather Center, our live audience, our musicians, and all of my Nebraska Public Media teammates who assisted with press releases, social media, logistics, and so much more, including this week, Carrie Meese, Bill Anderson, Shannon Clare, engineers Jeff Smith and Lathan Latimer, and associate producer Dave Hughes. I'm Genevieve Randall.